Also, this evening, I'd like to introduce two new youth council members who are on the dais joining us this evening. In addition to having our youth back leading the pledge, we are happy to have members of our youth council joining us on the dais. And every month or so, you'll see changing faces. So joining us this evening are Mr. Mylan Johnson, one of our original youth council members. Good to see you back. And a senior at Paradise Honors High School. And Talia Flores, a new member of our youth council and a senior at Willow Canyon High School. Welcome. All right. Next, we move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. Item 7 in your consent agenda has an item that includes receiving a donation from the Friends of the Library. And just wanted to take a minute to recognize if ever an organization had the name that fits them just perfectly, it's the Friends of the Library. We're very, very happy to have their leader with us tonight, Allie Klein. And Donna's going to do a little presentation, but we're going to be receiving the city a check for $20,000 this evening. But since Friends of the Library has been active in Surprise, with this $20,000 check, they have donated over $206,000 to our city. And so maybe as Donna's getting up, let's just give them a great round of applause. And please be ready. We'd sure love to have a photo op with you in a moment.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So earlier this year, CRS put in two different requests for funds from Surprise Friends of the Libraries. And I'm happy to say that both of those were approved by their board. The first one was for $15,000 to expand the hours at Hollyhock Library. As you know, that library is open Tuesdays and Thursdays, noon to 6. So this will allow us to open on Saturdays. The plan is 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. While we were talking with our CRS Advisory Commission about hours, we also, between staff and then also public comment, we are going to just modify the hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays to allow for those kids that get home from school, have time to come to the library. So we're going to be open 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. instead of noon to 6. So, and then the second request was for $5,000 for a variety of educational toys for our Tot Time program, which actually starts up next week, have about 75 to 100 kids. So it'll allow them to have puzzles and Legos and different educational toys for that program. So we thank Allie and the Friends of Surprise Libraries and their continued partnership and support. And we do have a check presentation. So
wonderful. So
if
council,
just join us down.
Them down in the well.
And then secondly, Madam Chair, members of the council, I'd like to ask Mike Cassidy to come up now and tell us about our special guests who are kicking off this school year with us. Mike.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It is great to be back celebrating our local schools after some time away during the summer months, and it is my great pleasure to introduce some very special guests that we have with us tonight. As you heard the mayor mention earlier, we have some students from Sonoran Heights Elementary School, and they are joined here tonight by their principal, Andrew Frazier. If Principal Frazier would please stand to be recognized. At this time, I'd like to invite students Alex Lerma, Jordan Brumskill, and Alyssa Horton to the podium to share a few words about their school.
Hello, my name is Jordan Brumskill. I'm an 8th grade student at Sonoran Heights taking the Algebra 1-2 class online. This course has enabled me to not only communicate with my peers, but to also collaborate with them, both problem solving and generating ideas. Algebra 1-2 keeps me entertained with work during class while also keeping me busy outside of class. Algebra 1-2 has been and will continue to improve my knowledge and skills, and I'm thankful to be a part of it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alex Lerma, and I am a 3rd grade student at Sonoran Heights. One way that my teachers have personalized my learning is through flexible seating. Flexible seating allows me to choose where and how I want to work. That is the most comfortable for me. It helps me concentrate more. My favorite seating options are the yoga ball or the standing at the taller table.
Hello, my name is Alyssa Horton, and I am in 8th grade at Sonoran Heights taking an Algebra 1 class online. This course allows me to work at my own pace and make sure I am grasping the information. Another great thing about this online course is it allows me to grow and not be stuck doing things I already understand how to do. This course has already helped me greatly, and I can't wait to continue expanding my knowledge throughout the year to come. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, don't be shy. Take the moment. Good-looking group. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And what a wonderful group yet again. This is always an exciting time of the year when we welcome our students back, and it's always best to have our day start off in the best possible way, which is to have them among us. We know you're our future, and so I want to thank all the parents that are here tonight too for raising such fine young men and women. So thank you. All right. Next is the city attorney's report.
None tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
City clerk's report.
Oh, just real quickly, Mayor, we're going to be celebrating National Voter Registration Day, and I'm working on putting together an effort for Tuesday, September 26th. And it's a collaborative effort with Dysart School District, Ottawa University, League of Women Voters, Women Leading Government, and our Surprise Youth Leadership Commission to register people to vote in the city of Surprise. So more information will be coming to the mayor and council soon.
That's fantastic, and congratulations on putting together a great coalition of people who are helping to get more people registered in the
We're
city
excited.
of Surprise.
We're
That's
excited
great.
about that. Thank you.
All right, next is call to the public.
None, just for item 14.
All right, very good. So next we have the consent agenda, which consists of 12 items. Does any member of council wish to remove any item for further discussion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to adopt the consent agenda as presented. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Please try again, please.
Light's not flashing.
How about we do a voice vote on this one, Mayor?
Sounds good.
Mayor Wolcott,
Aye.
Vice Mayor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Councilmember Hayden,
Aye.
Councilmember Winters.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Unanimous yes vote.
Thank you. Next item, item number 13.
Item 13, consideration and action pertaining to the Committee on Community Outreach, Partnerships and Grants recommendations for Surprise Community Outreach Program funding for fiscal year 2018.
Vice Mayor, I believe this is your subcommittee item, so if you wanted to just introduce this real quickly.
Sure. Thanks. I'm going to have staff talk a little bit, but for the introduction, I had the pleasure for my first time serving on this committee, and I got notice of it, I think, about 2 days before, and I got to chair it. So a little bit, we were talking earlier in a prior meeting about a little bit of reading material. There was a lot, but it was a great meeting. Councilmember Winters and Councilmember Remley also were part of the subcommittee. And we sat through, it was about a little over 4 hours of meetings with the people asking for 32 different applicants. And boy, I learned a lot. I knew a lot of the community organizations out here in Surprise, but I learned a lot. And what I really liked about it was they were learning about each other. And I think there were some opportunities for collaboration going forward. The process we went through was we listened to everybody like 4 or 5 minutes, and then moved on to the next one. But in between each one, the council members, committee members, we actually got to ask questions if we wanted some clarification before they went and sat down. The other thing we did was at the end of it, before we made a consensus decisions, I'll call it, for recommendations to the council, we actually asked staff, what are our needs? Because staff is very close to what some of the issues are. In fact, in reading some of these proposals, staff actually asks some of these organizations to come step up and say, hey, you might be able to help us do things that we don't quite have staff to do. So in the details, when we go through them a little bit more, we'll probably have a little bit more of that. But again, every one of our bit of our deliberation was, and our decisions was through consensus of the people in the room. We didn't really vote on who gets what, but we had a discussion. And again, we weighed heavily this round with staff's input because we know we got a lot of needs, and it's important to honor what our staff is saying, where are our biggest needs and what's the biggest fit. The other thing that struck me was that we're here to allocate $65,000, and that's what our council approved as a budget in the last budget fiscal year. And I did a little bit more research on that, and one city that came up as an example was the city of Avondale. And way back before the recession, they're a much smaller city than us. In fact, even today, they're growing too. We're 60% larger than the city of Avondale by population. But even going back before the recession, they were granting $110,000, which with a much smaller city. They took it down during the recession for a number of years down to $50,000. I see that they're back up to $100,000 in grants right now. And then we're at $65,000. The reason I'm bringing that up is they're at a rate of about $1.20 per capita on grants to do these different grants to community organizations. With our budget right now, we're about a 48, almost 49 cent per capita. So we're not really, apples and oranges with at least the city of Avondale. That's one thing that struck me, because the reason it struck me was we had so many great proposals. And I'm just thinking 65,000 spread against 32 people, 30 different organizations. We could give everyone 2,000 and that's it. But we had to try to decide where are our biggest needs, and that's how we did it through consensus. I will suggest that during our next budget season that maybe we consider, maybe what is the appropriate amount amongst council for our budget priorities. Because I just think there's going to be some unmet needs and some very valued organizations that could have really used some money to make things happen. And now this isn't just gift of money. This is actual services that they are going to be providing to the city of Surprise. And some of these services are needed. And one thing that impressed me was these organizations are filled with not only some paid staff, but they're filled with volunteers. And those volunteers are specialists in these types of services. And that's something, we're leveraging what we're getting by spending $1 here. We're getting much more in value and in kind in services to the city. So these are very important programs, and I'd like to have the staff go ahead and take it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We're here before you to present on this year's Surprise Community Outreach Grant funding recommendations. As you know, City Council established this program years ago to support local nonprofit organizations that serve Surprise residents. This year, the Committee on Community Outreach, Partnerships, and Grants consisted of Chair and Vice Mayor Todd Tandy, Council members Roland Winters, and Ken Remley. Some of the program guidelines, they must be a nonprofit and verify their 501c3 status with us, and they must submit a new application with every program cycle. The events, programs, activities must all take place in Surprise. The maximum award per applicant is $10,000. And this year, as Vice Mayor Tandy alluded, we had a total of $65,000 to provide. I'm happy to report this program continues to grow every year. The committee met on Thursday, August 17th to review the applicant's request. This year we had 32 applicants apply for a total request of $261,844. On the slide before you, we've broken it down, all the applicants, all 32, and the request, as well as the funding recommendations by the subcommittee. With that, we can answer any questions or refer them to Vice Mayor Tandy.
Any questions? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Councilman Winters and Vice Mayor Tandy and Councilman Renly, because I know you had to make some tough decisions about these with 32 applications, in the limited amount of funds we have, as Vice Mayor Tandy pointed out. So I respect all that. There's one area that I got a question about that kind of jumps out at me, and that is the Lutheran Social Services. Where are they located?
So, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hall, Lutheran Social Services is operating throughout really the state of Arizona. They don't have an office in Surprise like many of the nonprofits that have applied for service. But the model that they're proposing is called the Interfaith Homeless Emergency Lodging Program that they do operate throughout Maricopa County. Most recently, they started a program in Avondale, Goodyear area, and with the whole intent of sheltering someone in your home community without building a shelter, without having them go downtown where some of our homeless individuals and families don't want to go. Mm-hmm. And so it's another option. So they're proposing to try out a network here in Surprise.
So they're not currently serving any Surprise residents. This is all in the future.
This is all in the future for their proposal. I do know they offer their service area is Maricopa County. So they have other programs. They work with refugees. They do utility assistance as well. And so some Surprise residents can access their services when they call. But for this particular proposal and what they're asking for, no.
Okay. And the other, and this is connected, the other one that really concerns me is we're giving nothing to the Friends of the Library. after we just found out that they gave the city $206,000, and we just presented a check to the Hollyhock Library for $15,000, and yet we can't find a way to give them any money. I got an issue with that, and so that's me. So I think if it would be amenable to the committee, that's the rest of it. I can live with. I wish we could give West Valley Arts Council a little bit more. I wish we could give WHAM a little bit more, but the one that really stands out is Friends of the Library. And if we could take a little, since the Lutheran is a future, they're not serving residents right now. We're betting on the future, where we know that Friends of the Library is serving kids and residents right now in the city of Surprise. I think we ought to take some of the money from Lutheran Social Services and move it to Friends of the Library. That's my feeling.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor Tandy.
Thank you. I kind of had some of the same feelings that Councilmember Hall had, but it was kind of down to 65,000 spread. I can answer a couple of things on the Lutheran Social Services. I was wondering about that too. In the literature, it was actually a request for Lutheran Social Services to make the proposal by our director because of the homeless need the growing homeless need that we have. And that the program, it's actually the same one that Councilmember Hall, you and I went to Chandler, and we got a presentation from their people on it. It's the iHelp program. So that's exactly what it is. It seems to be a proven program that they could then tailor towards Surprise and maybe be ready to make some input into that. I'd kind of get them started. The minimum to get them started was 7,200. And we were kind of rounding at that point, so an extra 300. If we were going to take that money away, I'd kind of like to find a way to, make it a priority either in next year's budget that we do something like that, or if we can get it going even now, it might be just enough of a priority. It's something that I'm hearing from residents a lot. They're seeing a lot more homeless out there, and our event at the Salvation Army, the one-stop shop there, the Project Connect, boy, that really opened my eyes. We've got a bigger issue, and I think we're kind of behind on that. So that's kind of why in our discussion, and it was a consensus decision by everybody on the committee in the room, to go ahead and do that. But again, we zeroed out, I think, 11 of the nonprofits. I think that's a third of them. And there was another third that got about, that average minimum if it was all spread even. And there were only 2 or 3 that got a larger dollar amount, one being the Salvation Army to get their vehicle that we saw that was needed, and they didn't even get everything they asked for. They didn't get the things that go with the vehicle. And then the Lutheran Social Services was to get this program going so that we can move ahead. And then there were a couple others that were a little bit bigger dollars, but that was the reason I did the big long speech in the beginning. Was these are all leveraged dollars where we're getting so much more value. It's kind of like our GPEC on economic development. We couldn't afford for what we pay GPEC to get the kind of value we're getting. I think the same thing with these community organizations. I wish we could have done more on some of them because I'm concerned at the dollar amount that we allotted to some of these, whether or not they'll be able to find enough to make whatever was going to happen. And so we might actually get some return dollars in some of those cases.
I understand. It's just, Friends of the Library has 0 administration expenses. Everything is volunteer. They have like 250 volunteers that work the library,
right,
and sell those books to raise the money. It's just there's no administration costs.
Right.
And so I know there's got to be administration costs and some of these other things. I would just like to find a way to find some money for Friends of the Library.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, and maybe staff can help me out, but I believe theirs was actually for a reading program that we actually have in existence in other areas.
Read on Surprise.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's another great program, but we were spreading things too thin. So again, that was consensus, and now that that's the recommendation. Now that we're at council, we can
Okay.
talk about it.
Well, that's
Okay.
that's my recommendation. Try to find some money. But if you guys don't agree, then I'm in the minority. And
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Winters.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Hall does have a point about this because taking into consideration they're not even in surprise, and it's a future thing we're looking at. I wouldn't be opposed to take 2,500 of that and we give it to the Friends of the Library. Depending what my two colleagues think about that idea.
Councilmember Winters, I know that the board has come forward with a recommendation, so it's really the rest of the council that kind of needs to chew through all of this. And I appreciate, getting down into the weeds on actual numbers. But I think until we hear from the remainder of the council, I think we need to kind of figure out how we can work through this. So at this time, I'll go next to Councilmember Remley.
Thank you, Mayor. As I recall, and others can correct me if I'm wrong, as I recall, the reading program at the Friends of the Library, now, I'm a great proponent of libraries, as my compadres know up here. Libraries are near and dear to my heart. But as I recall, on this particular program, it was almost an all or nothing. We either had to give the full amount of money or they couldn't do it. And we decided that we didn't have the money, not that we didn't want to give it. It was simply that we only had $65,000 to spread between 32 organizations.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Tandy?
Could staff help us with, I don't know if it's easy to grab, but could you help us with what the minimum the Friends of the Library was willing to accept was, and what the minimum the Lutheran Social Services could accept to do this program? They're a little bit different in that one is funding a program, and the other one is funding some professional staff that will help us create a program for the future.
So Friends of the Library was looking to fund 2 additional Read on Greater Surprise programs, one in the OTS and one in Central Surprise. They hadn't solidified the locations yet. It was contingent upon this funding. They said they would take a minimum of anything. With that, they were going to serve 30 families, and to be considered as one of the families that they would serve under the Read on Greater Surprise program, the family had to have a child under the age of 5 years old. So 30 families, but the number of children that would be impacted could be much greater than that. I'll defer to Seth for Lutheran Services.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor Tandy. The Raising the Reader program is what the proposal is. There is currently, I think, 1 or 2 Raising a Reader programs underway in Surprise right now. So the Friends of the Library proposal was to expand that, which is good. It's a great workforce development initiative. It's getting children 0 to 5 exposed and getting them reading with their family and guardians. The Lutheran Social Services, their minimum was $7,200 that they would accept. However, that money, all that money is going to go towards business development to reach out to a minimum of and secure a minimum of 10 different faith community commitments to set up the structure. So then there's a network built, and so it's just a lot of time and effort, and that's what they're putting their money in. So $7,200 to answer your question was the minimum they said they'd be willing to take. Many of these organizations, as you know, however, are not receiving the full amount of funding. And so there will be some modification of some of their scope to make sure if you're only getting $1,000, you can actually make it work. And so we'll see as the organizations, if they accept the recommendations of funding, what they receive. If there's money left on the table, we'll come back to the subcommittee and council to redistribute.
Well, obviously, to the Vice Mayor's point earlier, I mean, services are extensive and the need is great. And so we are actually, this is a nice problem to have, because when we first started this program, we had a hard time even finding enough people to apply. So I think as we have taken a greater focus on, particularly on social services in the last couple of years, it's really enhanced the number of people who have found ways to be of service in partnership with our community, with the City of Surprise, and with this particular grant program. So um, it, it it would be lovely if we could meet every need, all 200 and how many thousand?
260.
$260,000 worth of grant requests. It would be lovely to do that. We're just not in a position to do that. So it means that we make tough choices, and that means that the subcommittee ends up making tough choices, splitting the baby sometimes. And so looking long term, who would have ever thought that the City of Surprise would have a homeless youth problem? Who would have ever thought it? So being able to get ahead of it, in my view, being able to get ahead of it instead of letting it just get so far out there that we're trying to react to it, is something that's really critical. That's my personal feeling. And I think that I hate to say zero on any of these things. But again, when you start splitting some of these things to such small incremental amounts, it almost becomes challenging for them to even move forward on their program. So personally, I want to make certain that we fund this program that that the Lutheran Social Services is suggesting, because I think this is a critical need that could be much worse if we don't get a handle on it up front. So that's my personal thought. If we wanted to start moving numbers around, I would suggest that's not the place we take it from. So, Councilmember Winters.
I just want to, in this whole process, want to acknowledge Jody Tass and what a great job she did just putting those books together. I mean, those books, as Vice Mayor points out, is very, very thick. And she did a great job putting those together. Without her, we'd be lost.
Thank you. Talia Flores?
So I was just wondering what kinds of like veteran services the Veterans Memorial Hall was looking to fund, seeing as they had like nothing for the recommendation, and Animal Rescue had like 2,000. Because I know like services for veterans is very important, not just to me, but like I know a lot of my friends, their grandparents or their fathers are veterans, and so I was just wondering what services they were looking to fund that the recommendation would be nothing.
Good question. Would you like to?
Sure. So great question. Thank you for the question. I believe we have a representative from the Veterans Hall here, but their proposal, what I remember, is that they were helping to build their capacity to then eventually build a hall here, a Veterans Memorial Hall here in Surprise, and all the added capacity that they can gain to get support for that and leverage that money would have been fruitful. So, but that's their intent, is to eventually build a Veterans Memorial Hall here, to your point, to serve our veterans who served us so proudly. And then did you have us follow up with the Chance Shelter? Is that what I heard?
Oh, no, I was just saying, I was wondering why Veteran Services had like nothing for their recommendation, while like Animal Rescue had like 2,000, considering.
Okay.
I don't know, yeah, sorry.
I'll let the Vice Mayor take a stab at that.
That was one of those things where, wow, there's lots of great opportunities to different programs. And we are engaged with the Veterans Hall. In fact, I believe we agreed to waive fees for when they build their facility. So that's actually a bigger savings to them than everything we're talking about right here. So that was one of those things where, what a great program, but maybe we can help them in better ways than through this limited amount of dollars to grants for some of the organizations. That would have gone right to the building, getting the building done. But I think there's better ways the city can help them on that. The Chance Shelter is, we have a lot of animal lovers here in the city of Surprise. And we have we have some animal control officers that try to help find the lost pets and bring them in. But it's actually animal care and control is actually a county-wide function. And so when our officers bring them in, they take them to the county eventually. And I think we've got some groups out there that would like to keep them here as long as they can. The Chance Shelter is one of those, and they eventually want to build a shelter. But what they were asking for was when they receive some of these pets or find them, they need veterinary fees and things like that to make sure that they're going to survive. So 2,000 doesn't go very far again for even just one group, but it at least puts a dent into a little bit, maybe saves a few. So again, that was the struggle, really big struggle that we were having, and that's what hit me right away is, wow, we've got a lot of needs out there, a lot of people. These are volunteers that do that. You know, they would volunteer to take the animals over to the veterinary clinic, but the veterinarians do charge fees for services. So just a lot of great opportunities. I'll mention one other thing about the Lutheran Social Services. We recently had a fantastic event for interfaith where we had all the different faiths here in the city and the area get together, and it was a great event. It was held right in the back, the community room back over here. And it's something that I know I would like to expand down the road. And I know Councilman Hall and I both have been a champion of that area. So that's another area where, well, okay, we're going to have some group take the lead on this program. And then the ultimate vision of this program is that the churches and the different faith communities are going to help us on this. And that's how it's done in the East Valley, and that's also how it's being done in the new cities that they're serving in the West Valley. So it's again, how do we get there, and how do we get there faster? Because the problem is here, like the mayor said, some of these things will cost us more in real dollars, and enforcement and all medical, all kinds of things to the city and the taxpayers than if we just had this program that would, maybe handle it when it's less a severe issue.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. I don't mean to be a fly in the ointment, but I got to ask. Okay, when somebody says I've got to have this amount or I'm out, what do they give you a rationale? What's magic about $7,200? Okay, and when somebody tells me I got to have X, then I want a rationale of why. How do you get to X? I got two people doing this, and I got that, and I got travel, and not just give me 72 or I'm out. You know what I'm saying? So that's my one point, but I don't want to beat it to death. The other thing is there might be an opportunity here at the Youngtown Community Fund. I mean, I know they give walkers and stuff like that, right? I think that's what's which is great. But I'm just wondering, since they're in Youngtown, if we can keep it a surprise back to the Friends of the Library, teach some kids to read. I don't know. That'd be 2,000. I'd be open to that.
Would you
if
care
Todd
to,
and Ken and Roland would be open to that.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Hall, I know the proposal was to serve just Surprise residents with this pot of money. And I think it's, if I remember correctly, over 30% of the people they serve are Surprise residents. So again, one of the requirements is that we want citizens of Surprise to be served. And I think there's some, as you can see, the number 32 organizations, they want to come serve. And so they are recommending only to serve Surprise residents with this. I think Youngtown was about 30% of their total that will go to Surprise residents. I don't know if that helps.
Well, I just think Friends of the Library is 100%.
Yeah.
And, that's, but But it's up to these. I mean,
Councilmember Hall, would you care to make a motion? Because you know, I think the committee obviously went through a lot to try to sort through all of these requests. And again, it's kind of like splitting the baby. And so we're all in that position. So if you would like to make a motion, I think that's something that we need to discuss.
Okay, let's do that. I move to approve the funding mechanism recommendations contained in the Human Services and Community Vitality Staff Report, with the exception of Friends of the Library, 0, adjusted to 2,000, and the Youngtown Community Fund of 2,000, adjusted to 0.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this motion? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I think we're struggling over $2,000, and we're nearly at the point where we're going to get a year-end assessment or forecast of what our year-end books closed at. And in prior years, it's, we've gotten hundreds of thousands here and there, and we've allocated to new projects. We actually do have contingency funds set aside for just certain cases where things pop up. And I would be comfortable with continuing to fund the Youngtown, and then maybe asking the council to consider taking out a contingency $2,000 to fund the Friends of the Library. So basically, we'd be using our fund balance. But I do think we'll have, I don't know how soon we're going to be having an answer for the fund balance.
Mr. Wainwright.
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor. So as part of our funding approach for public safety, the budget before last, we eliminated a contingency fund.
Okay.
You are correct that in many cases when we close out the year, we do have funds, which was the mechanism that we use to fund the fence, to do some of the good projects that we saw earlier. And so it's too early to tell where we will be, but we at that time could come back to you. But I think even though it's a minuscule amount, I don't know that I could commit that we would have that money available right now.
Right. And that was my concern going through this whole thing. We're just so tight, and we have so little amount of budget to go through.
Yeah.
And that was something that came up in the discussion was, well, why Youngtown? Well, because they're the ones that do provide that service to Surprise, and I don't think there is a secondary area for that. Whereas there are secondary areas providing what the Friends of the Library is proposing.
That's true. And the only question through the chair.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I totally understand that, Vice Mayor, but I guess my problem is giving Friends of the Library 0 when they actually give Surprise money. They just gave us money for the Hollyhock Library, okay, and they're going to continue. But I think from a I don't even know what you want to call it, symmetrical basis, to give them a goose egg after all they do for the city. And they've been doing it for a long time. I mean, it's been like 12 years. I saw their books, and they've given over, between Dysart School District and the city, is over $500,000. So, I mean, when you're talking about $2,000, it seems, it's a lot more than 0. And 0 is kind of a slap in the face to me if I was Friends of the Library. And that's me.
So, Councilmember Hall, and I respectfully, I think that there is no desire on any member of this subcommittee's part to try to zero out anybody or to diminish their importance to the community. So it'd be difficult for us to sit here and assume that any member of the subcommittee has values any of these services less. It's just that they were charged with making a very difficult recommendation. So I would prefer that we not
Totally.
start placing concerns about someone's values. It begins to charge us with motive, and I don't really want to go down that
But
road.
through the chair, this is a recommendation, correct?
It is correct. It
And
is
I
a
made a
recommendation.
motion.
And you did make a motion.
Okay, so let's go forward.
Requesting to speak on this motion.
So the motion has been made and seconded, and so now we're in the discussion on the motion. So, Councilmember Remley.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like us all to realize that this was probably the toughest decision that we had to make. We spent nearly 6 hours that day in this meeting, and we tried to give Roland Winters a break and ask him if he wouldn't like to convene it at another time, and he said, no, we're going to keep going. And I'm going, oh God. Okay, so we did. And we made some considerations when we were determining how much we were giving to each of these companies. They're all worthy, believe me. The monies they were asking for were not unreasonable. Salvation Army was one of the biggest recipients. They were offered a truck by the U-Haul company at a very deep discount from what the truck was worth. And we gave them just the amount of money they could use to get the truck so that they could pick up food to be able to give to people. We didn't give them enough money for the lift gate for the back. We only gave them the discounted value of that truck. I mean, we cut everything right to the bone in terms of what we gave, but we tried to get the most mileage we could with the money. I know that the reading program is important, and I know that the Friends of the Library are very important to us, and we recognize them as such. And I personally do, because I'm very, very into this. But I can tell you that we as a council need to find some money in this next budget year so that we don't have to have this discussion next year.
Councilmember Remley, I can say this. If we raise the amount, and we will, I suspect that we will find as a council a desire that we can all, there will be consensus to try to add additional funds to this particular program. But we can raise it, we can double it, we can triple it, and our staff and you, our subcommittee, will fill every single one of those requests, or at least attempt to, and continue to grow. And as I said at the beginning, this is a great problem to have, that the community is reaching out and appreciating the fact that we are trying to find ways to contribute to the social service network that's so critical to our community. So I just want to applaud the committee for the tough decisions that they had to make, to our staff, the tough times that they had to go through to help the council subcommittee sort through all of this. We do have a motion on the table which does change the numbers, and so the question is, is the council comfortable with that recommendation, or is there a desire to keep moving? So I want to try to get a feel for that. Councilmember, Vice Mayor Tandy.
Kind of like to make a comment. So I kind of explained kind of the thought process. So earlier we were asking all the prospective District 3 council members, how do you analyze things? What goes into your thought process? So what went into my thought process was, coming into this committee and being on the committee for about a day and then chairing it the next day was, wow, just eye opener. But I tried to get through and tried to observe for how can we make things better going down the road. That's why part of the reason for the speech and, things we can think about for next year. But one of the things I didn't bring up in that speech was I like to look at the agencies themselves. Some of them have the capacity to earn their own funds and bring their own funds. And, I want to encourage them to do that. Some others are kind of just starting to get going and maybe need a little bit more help, as is some of the stronger organizations right now. We were big helpers in their formation. And that's kind of one of my goals is how do we make these organizations strong and stand on their own? Another organization, for Taste of Surprise, the ask was 10,000 like last year, and we gave them 5. Well, they did a great job, but they're also able to, within their own board, figure out some policies and maybe save some of that money for the following year. And maybe next year they don't need the funding. They save back a little bit to get their starter funding go. I kind of looked at that as the Friends of the Library as because they've been able to generate a couple $100,000. It's all volunteer staff. They get volunteer donations and they sell them, and that's how they raise the money. And my experience, I've met Allison Klein many times. I've been there to several of the meetings and stuff, and been through there. But my background, and maybe they don't know that, is back when I was in California, I was the administrator for Orange County Public Library System, the Santiago Library System. And I was very tied in with the Friends of the Library there. And that was a county-wide system, very, very large organization. So I have a niece that's a librarian. So I have a heart for that as well. But when I do the analysis and I see that they're generating all this money, and if I don't know what the inner workings of their particular board are, but maybe they could hold back some of that money. And if that program, that reading program, was a priority for them, they could save that $2,000 and make it go there instead of donating the rest to us. So I look at those things when I do the analysis, and that was one of those cases where I think they have the capacity to do that and can fund it down the road and maybe have a special event and sell some extra books and get that done. Some of these other organizations, I'm not sure that's the case because they don't have big fundraising arms or they don't have that kind of system or program. So that was at least how I analyze some of this. And it doesn't go to, whether one organization is better than the other. I think they're all fantastic because they're all filled with volunteers making the city better. And so, again, we just try to do our best to try to sort it out and try to make it all balance a little bit. So that I just thought people needed to understand some of the thought process.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the items before us with the exception of Councilmember Hall's suggestion that we zero out, sorry, which one was it?
Youngtown.
Zero out Youngtown to give the commensurate amount of $2,000 to Friends of the Library. Everyone understand the motion and the amendment? All right, seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
We have 4 yes votes and 2 no votes, and the no votes are Tandy and Remley.
Thank you. So the motion prevails.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you especially to our subcommittee, Vice Mayor, and our staff I know this is really tough. And I think that the level of discussion that we just engaged in, I think really speaks to the need and how we need to try to figure out how we can perhaps fund a little bit more next time. We discussed a little bit about the contingency fund, and thank you, Mr. Wiggenroth, for reminding us that when we went through a discussion about taxes and increases, that we said, well, all right, then just eliminate the council contingency fund. I think we might have forgotten that part, but the reality is we did eliminate it in order to try to make certain that we were funding that great need in our public safety department. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I think everybody has their heart in the right place. So I want to thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you.
All right. We move on to the next item.
Consideration and action pertaining to adoption of a citywide temporary sign policy, Resolution 2017-98. We do have 3 speakers for this item, Mayor.
Thank you. It's been hours and hours since I've seen you last.
I know, right? So, Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Just a reminder, about a little bit less than a month ago, we had a work session looking at possibilities relative to our temporary sign policy. I'll go through a little bit of a history on the policy. I'll go through the previous policies that were in place. Then I'll go through a little bit of what the proposed temporary policy, which is really a beta test of kind of the draft temporary portion of the sign code that we would bring forward to council. So in Resolution 2016 was the citywide temporary sign policy, which was put in place in 2016, which was based on resolutions in 2009 as well as 2012. Subsequently, the city acted in Resolution 2016-43 on April 2016 to continue this policy, and then repealed by Resolution 2017 in February of 2017. So just a lot of numbers, resolutions, and so forth. Really what these policies had put in place was allowed A-frames, 1 per business, but could not be located on a street, sidewalk, or within a visibility triangle. Banners that allowed 1 per business, but must be placed on the building. And then currently the way that our sign code is, it's actually in violation of state statute. So what we had was sign walkers were allowed required a no-fee permit. Currently in our existing ordinance, we don't allow sign walkers, which by statute is not allowed. By statute, we have to allow sign walkers.
Wait a minute. You tell me that if we don't allow sign walkers, that the state could take away all of our state aid because it's something that the law allows? Mr. Wingo, is that true?
Well,
Eventually?
I mean, yeah, there's been a bill passed last previous session that allowed a state legislator to file a complaint with the Attorney General, upon which the Attorney General investigates. If the Attorney General finds there's a violation or a conflict with state law, it places in jeopardy cities' state shared revenue. If the Attorney General finds there may be a violation, the Attorney General is directed to file a special action in court and have the court adjudicate whether there's a violation. The statute calls for a bond to be posted by a city in the amount of 6 months of state shared revenue, which is a lot of money. So it does place into jeopardy.
So, and I bring this up only because it's one of my favorite subjects is the concept of local control. And I do find it interesting that the person that was responsible for making certain that the state requires you to allow sign walkers happened to have a sign walking business, and he was also a state senator. So it is frustrating for us to sit here and try to make good local public policy, only to have the swift hand of the state legislature come in and say, you will not make a law that impacts me personally, or else we will come in and swipe out your state shared revenue. So, which, by the way, I believe we collect. Is that not correct? We collect a lot of the state shared revenue, send it to the state, and then they turn around and send it back to us. Isn't that the way it kind of works, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the council, the surprise businesses do collect
Yes,
that, and then it comes back.
we collect it here. So at any rate, I digress, but I just wanted to make this point, and I'm going to continue to make this point every time we reach a place where we're making public policy because a state legislature said, you must do this, and without being given the opportunity to listen to what is happening at the local level. So I thank you for this. It's just a great opportunity to raise the question.
So also currently in our code, we don't allow any type of A-frames, whether that's the smaller A-frames, the larger A-frames, A-frames or this or A-frames or that. We actually have, basically, we do not allow A-frames under our current ordinance. We had a work session on August 1st where we kind of talked about these items as well as kind of put into play some of the temporary provisions of the proposed sign code that's going through the public process as we speak. So because of that, we're back in front of you with the proposed temporary sign policy. The policy is broken up into these sections, which is based upon the language that's currently with some modifications, which I'll explain in the sign code that's out for public distribution. So duration, one of the items that's a little bit different. We have if this policy is enacted upon today by the council, the policy would be in effect come 30 days after approval of the resolution, and until such time that we adopt the new sign code as well as repeal this resolution, which we'd probably do under one action if possible. Section 3 of the First Amendment, interpretation severability. This is an item that, based on multiple meetings we've done with different organizations as well as our legal department, as allowing some severability clause within the policy that would allow us to sever pieces of the policy that could possibly be determined to be unconstitutional or in violation of certain rights. So that's the reason to have the severability clause within this policy specifically. So the sign policy, there's a couple definitions I'm gonna hit on real briefly because these are the main ones that when we look at the enforcement and the recognition of signs under the temporary sign policy, that these pieces kind of all touch. So one is we have what we call and are defining as a lawful temporary event, which we're referencing another section of code as well as including real estate open houses and other temporary events as determined by the city manager designee. I'm sure Bob doesn't want to sit and determine every single temporary event, so that's why he has designees like his staff to make the determinations, and if he wants to overrule those, he has every right to do so. So that's one of the reasons to have that in there, because we may have temporary events that we not specifically have called out, but would be temporary in nature. That's something that we could classify under there. We also have designed or identified a small A-frame sign. This is typically the size of what you would see for open houses and other temporary events that are out there. Again, 24 inches in height, not to equal greater than 8 square feet and so forth. So this is kind of what we've seen under the industry norms that we've seen out in practice. Now we get on to the larger temporary class 2 frames. These are typically the ones you see in around the businesses, as well as some other functions that you see in residential areas, which I'll allude to a little bit later. But these are about the typical industry norm is about 45 inches in height. These are the typical industry standards for a standard type A frame or a pedestal sign that's out in practice as we speak. Prohibited signs. We've included some prohibited signs in here specifically because, we get questions a lot of time, can, these A-frames have lights and those kinds of things? Well, really they're supposed to be lit by ambient light, or it's supposed to be during business hours or during daylight hours when they're utilized. So if you look through these, we have some specific signs that are prohibited under this policy that are in concert with the recommendation or the existing draft language that's out there under the temporary sign code. So here's kind of getting into the where these things can be located and so forth, and specifically on temporary sign classification restrictions. Under the original language of the proposed text, we were looking at restricting these to a maximum of 3 located at certain areas. Well, kind of going through the public process, going through the Planning and Zoning Commission, talking with council, I can't touch on every specific temporary, lawful temporary event, but we will touch a little bit on real estate signs, is that maybe 3 isn't enough. In fact, if you have an event that you're running in the middle of a subdivision, when you have 10 different streets that you need to turn on to get to it, 3 would only get you part of the way there. So one of the items was looking at limiting to 1 per corner along the route to the temporary event. But also we looked at different ideas of whether to limit it by within a half mile of the event or within a mile of the event. Well, it looks great and it works when you look at it from an aerial image. When you look at it, okay, here's the temporary event and this is 1 mile away. However, when you're driving vehicles up and down streets and you have your code enforcement officers kind of out there on patrols, it doesn't necessarily work that way. So one of the language ideas that staff came up with specifically was going to the nearest arterial road. So from the nearest arterial into the site, there'll be allowed signage that would guide a person from the arterial into the site to the temporary event. So that was kind of the language that kind of came out of those discussions. Other items, one of the items too was allowing them to be located in the right of way, however, but not located in certain parts of the right of way. Under a 24-inch high sign, it actually can be located in a site visibility easement. It actually meets all site visibility criteria set forth in the design engineering design standards, so it could be located in there. However, we wanted to make sure that they weren't locating these signs within medians and so forth. So that's why some of the language you see in there has been located in that potential policy. And then we have other temporary events that maybe we're not thinking of that could be associated with a temporary use permit, such as special events and those kinds of things that are put forward that would be allowed these types of signage, but would come in under a temporary use permit. So those are the items that we've kind of massaged the language on going through this process and working with the public as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission and other stakeholders. Then we have the larger signs, which would be more associated with typically businesses. However, there is specific events that are located out in residential areas. One of those events that could be a church service and so forth, which is actually the basis of kind of the whole reason why we're going through this whole sign ordinance rewrite with the Reed versus Gilbert decision. So we looked at allowing them within a lawful commercial use, but within 15 feet of the front door of the main entrance of the business. If they're located in a residential area, they would be allowed up to 4. But if you look at the criteria, the closest arterial street associated with the temporary event, similar to how the language was crafted for the smaller temporary signs. And then we have some hours of operation specifically on both, or in this we have a 4 p.m. Friday to 11 p.m. Sunday. On the other event with the smaller signs, it's a 7 a.m. to 7, I believe it's a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Or yeah, it was a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. specifically in the language of the temporary sign a policy that's in the resolution. Other items would be specifically if we have a temporary use permit in place for some kind of other temporary event, they would be allowed some adherence into this policy, but those locations, those signs would be set up in their permit themselves. So when they came in for a temporary use permit, such as an arts type event that are held in the community, they could have these, but they would have to locate kind of where these are, and then that's how we would permit those. So we wanted to be as adaptable as possible to the changing landscape of these events and so forth, but still having some regulatory authority over how these signs go out. Other temporary signs that we looked specifically, banners. Typically when we get complaints and we have complaints from residents and so forth, they're really, for the most part, on the A-frames themselves. We haven't had a whole lot of complaints on banners. So if you look at the banner section specifically, this is very similar to kind of what was in place under the old temporary sign policy. You're allowed a banner up for, but it has to meet certain size criteria, must be affixed to the building and so forth. In cases where you have construction, we'll allow a banner to kind of announce a new business coming, those kinds of things on the construction, on the fencing, but it has to be affixed properly and so forth. And then the sign walker piece. Mayor.
Question about banners. Does that include inflatable animals?
Mayor, council, that does not include inflatable animals. That's inflatable animals and so forth are under the prohibited items section of the temporary sign policy. So this would allow a banner specifically that was affixed to the building. Sign walkers, again, time, place, and manner, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. must be located, appropriately so that it doesn't block pedestrian access, similar to the other signs. But it allows sign walkers associated with the revised statutes. Well, that said, that's kind of the basis of the overall policy that we have in front of the council for adoption. Be happy to take any questions from the council.
Okay, we'll start with Councilmember Winters.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is one of those real tough decisions. You got to be aware of the business person who's trying to make a living and balance it with unsightly city with signs all over. It's really a can of worms. But one question I had for you, under these conditions, the businesses that are operating out of homes in the original town site cannot have a sign.
Mayor, Councilmember Winters, if they are classified as a cottage industry, they would be allowed to have this type of signage.
Because I noticed your terminology said not a business in a home.
Mayor, Councilmember Winters, not a home-based business, which per our definitions would basically be 25% or under of the home itself being utilized for that business and certain criteria associated with that. But if it was criteria associated with the cottage industry that's allowed to be located within the original town site, they would have the ability to utilize a type 2 temporary sign, which is the 45-inch tall.
So what is the definition of a cottage industry as opposed to someone that had business at his home?
A home-based business is specific. I couldn't exactly tell you the exact definition of that right now. But the cottage industry is a more intense business that typically wouldn't be allowed associated with a home-based business.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, cottage industry is typically someplace that's allowed in a certain specific area. So, for example, we have an original town site that has a different kind of an overlay. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilmember, that's correct. The only areas currently that we allow cottage industries are within the original town site overlay districts.
Right. So does that help you, Councilmember?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Ramley, I think this is your district, so I think, are you familiar with the concept?
Yes, the cottage industry is allowed up to 50% of the building size, and it could be almost anything. It could be a hair salon, but basically it's a business located within the Heritage District.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Ramley, you had the next question.
Thank you, Mayor. Class 1 temporary signs has no time restrictions on it, except that the signs need not to be placed prior to 1 hour.
That's correct.
And removed 1 hour after the event. So, and the class 1 temporary signs are those commonly used by realtors for an open house event or something. And of course, they put them out just before and take them down afterwards, but it doesn't restrict it to any particular time of the day. That was my...
Was that a statement or a question?
That was a statement.
I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. In the prohibitive signs, one of the prohibitions is festoons. When you're talking about a festoon, are you talking about something that's hanging out of the window of a business? Like an ornament? Or what? What do you mean by festoon in this context?
That would be something similar, something that waves around and causes more, that would hang out from a window, that kind of thing. Similar to that, correct?
I see. Okay. All right. And then the A-frame signs, if you're a business, this temporary sign policy says you can have a temporary sign 15 feet from the entry to your business.
Mayor, Councilmember Hall, correct.
And that's it.
That would be the farthest away that would be located, as
Okay.
written.
As written. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Vice Mayor Tandy.
Thanks. So what you're bringing before us right now, the way I understand it is, it's going to be a temporary ordinance or a variation to our existing sign ordinance that will take care of some of the issues until we adopt the full sign ordinance.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Tandy, correct. So this would be basically beta testing kind of what's out there under the under review now with some minor modifications, so that we could kind of ascertain, how these are working in the field.
Okay. And I know that, through this entire, I don't know how long this process is, but it's been a long process of gathering public input for the new sign ordinance rewrite. I'm sure you'll be gathering public input for how does this work? How is this temporary change working? And will it work like this, or with some additional tweaks to go into the final ordinance? So I'm just putting it out there to clarify in case anybody's wondering, but at least that's my understanding, and I hope that's where we're going, because I do think we need lots of public input on this. And at least I do like this might solve some of the issues for some of the people, at least temporarily, until we get to the final sign ordinance. And it might be similar to this.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, this is exactly it. It's to test it out, see if we need to make some other modifications. Also to take public comment on this as we go through the process. We'll be coming in front of council. We actually have a couple more meetings scheduled for Planning and Zoning Commission 2 on the overall temporary sign code, and we'll go back through that process with council after that as well.
Okay. And I'm not going to ask, well, I am going to ask, this doesn't address everybody's issue, but this addresses a substantial number of people's issues.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, we believe that it addresses a substantial portion of those issues, but as you said, it will not address every single one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
I'm good. Thank you.
Councilmember Remley.
Thank you, Mayor. In the prohibited signs, I didn't see anything about teardrop signs.
Mayor, Councilmember Remley, teardrop signs are currently not allowed under the ordinance.
This says prohibited signs. It doesn't say they're prohibited.
Mayor, Councilmember, this is not replacing the overall sign code. Under the sign code, those teardrop signs are not allowed. Under the current version of the potential sign code, we do have a section that could potentially allow for teardrop signs. However, at this point, we did not have an overwhelming group of people out trying to have the city allow teardrop signs, so we didn't address it under this policy. But that would be something that would be addressed under the permanent sign code.
Because, quite commonly, I am seeing teardrop signs in residential areas in connection with open houses. And not just one in a yard, sometimes 2 or 3. And I would think that is not something that we would normally be permitting either way, but I didn't see it here, so it's not permitted at all currently, is that correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Remley, there are no provisions for teardrop signs. They're not allowed within the city as of now.
Okay. But thanks for bringing it to our attention, Councilmember Remley.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Winters.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Eric, clarify something for me. You can have an A-frame, but not further than 15 feet from your business.
Mayor, Councilmember Winters, if it's a lawful business, commercial business, they could have it at maximum 15 feet from the front door.
Okay, so this doesn't really help the small business that's back in the shopping center somewhere. He can't put a sign out front by the sidewalk.
Mayor, Councilman Winters, currently as written, it would not allow for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So we have a consideration for adoption of Resolution 2017-98. Does anyone have a motion to propose?
I move to approve Resolution 2017-98.
Public comments. Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the, Resolution 2017-98 as presented. We now have open for discussion. I think we have 3 people that have signed up, now 4 people that have signed up.
Yes.
So would you call the
Yes, the first
The
person
individuals.
is Nate Brill.
good evening, and if you would identify yourself for the record.
Sure. I'm Nate Brill with Realty One Group, and I imagine you're probably sick of seeing me at this point.
Not at all. I've seen
Yeah.
you twice today.
It's true. First, I want to thank you guys very much. This started off, at least from this side, as a very contentious debate. It was very restrictive and was affecting our businesses in a dramatic way. So to see just as much effort has been put into this, it's been very refreshing. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that. In regards to the bill that's being proposed right now, I would request 2 amendments to that. The first relating directly to our business in real estate, and the second one, as a citizen of Surprise who shops a lot of the local businesses that are tucked away, I want to address both of those. So first, from our business standpoint, there are a lot of communities where the open house that we're holding is directly smack dab in the middle between 2 major arterials. So perfect example, where I live in Surprise Farms, where I do a lot of my open houses, I might be sandwiched directly in between Greenway and Bell Road. And to not only from the standpoint of which one am I closest to, but also both of them are major arterials for us. And we need to be able to access both of them to be able to get enough traffic in to make it a worthwhile event. So I don't know exactly what that language looks like. And I'm trying to take a note from you, Skip, because you had mentioned that, I believe it was you, maybe it was somebody else, the last time, where we didn't really come equipped with much in the way of, no, I'm getting it confused with one of the commissioners. I'm sorry. Somebody made a comment that we did not come equipped with enough solutions to the problem. We were coming with a lot of problems, but not enough solutions. And I definitely took that to heart. I just learned about the arterial portion of this just this morning, so I don't have a good solution, but I do think it's worth the debate. And I don't know that that's something we can get resolved today, but I don't think one arterial is enough for what we're trying to accomplish. From the standpoint of the proximity of the 15 feet from the door, I don't think that solves any problems for the current businesses that are struggling because of the sign ordinance. Because if you're 15 feet away from the door, 15 feet is not far. I would imagine I am probably less than 15 feet from you guys right now. I step back a foot, I'm probably right within that. I can see the sign just as well from 15 feet as I can directly in front of the door. That doesn't solve the problems for those businesses. I have clients of mine that are local business owners here who are struggling with this, and they're in parking lots where they're tucked all the way at the back, and the only sort of sign visibility they get is from their temporary signs on the corner of the street. And they need those signs, and I, as a resident and as a consumer, I also need those signs in order to know that they're even there. So I think the 15 feet is not nearly enough for what they're really looking for, and I don't think that it solves the problem. So I would say something more similar to the verbiage that there is for us in real estate, where it is more like from the major arterial. So if there's somebody in the Ace parking lot, that they have something right there at Cotton and Bell in order for somebody to be able to see them.
Thank you.
So thank you very much again. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Wendy Cosentino.
Good evening. If you would just identify yourself for the record.
Sure. My name is Wendy Cosentino. I'm mayor, vice mayor, council members. I am a local business owner, and I have been aware of the new laws regarding signage for businesses for the city of Surprise. I would like to offer an opinion from a small business owner's perspective. I currently own Imagine Salon and Day Spa. And we're located at 114th Avenue and Bell Road in the Belmar Shopping Plaza. Our location is in the plaza is a little hard to find as we are tucked away behind the huge fountain in the middle of the plaza behind the breezeway there. We are invisible to the street and the parking lot. If you were to drive into the plaza, you would never know that we were even there. So I understand for the aesthetics, A-frame, other random signage sitting on the street are not the best looking thing to see when I come into the city. I also live in Surprise as well. That is something I can definitely agree with. What I cannot agree with is the new laws that govern what signage should be on private property. I do understand the signage needs to look nice, aesthetically pleasing. I completely agree with that. What I am arguing is that we are not visible when you're not visible from the road or the parking lot. A simple sign with an arrow, showing kind of where you should go should be acceptable. Just touching on the 15 feet thing, that is it's unacceptable. It really is. He's made a great point. If you're 15 feet, you can see my salon. It's when you're pulling into the plaza and people are driving around looking for it and driving away because they can't find me. So with the Bell and Grand closure last summer and the new signage laws that have been enforced this summer, my business has taken about a 32% loss in income. So that's been tough for us small business owners that survive on that income. Haven't been able to take a paycheck in a couple months, which stinks when you're putting your heart and soul into something and coming out with nothing. So that is why I'm asking you today to please look at the new laws that have been approved, ask that they be revised immediately. We cannot wait 6 months. Most of us small business owners are riding the line now, and it's a scary thing. So I'm also asking that any citations and fines be placed on hold until the new signage laws are amended. We are already losing business. We cannot afford a fine on top of that. Business owners like myself cannot wait. We need answers right away. So that is why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Riccio?
My name is Liz Recchi. I'm Government Affairs Director for WEMAR, the West Maricopa Association of Realtors. First of all, I want to thank the City Council as well as staff. You've been listening to WEMAR, to business owners, to residents, and we really appreciate that. The consequences of the February 2017 vote that reverted us back to the 2009 sign ordinance has been all-encompassing, overwhelming, and in some cases devastating. We appreciate that the city has decided to try and road test part of this temporary sign ordinance to see what we can do for going forward as you look at the larger potential sign ordinance. Once again, WEMAR believes in adequate, visible, and legible signage for businesses, and that means, once again, for those businesses that are tucked in the back or whose back's to the wall to a major street, that they be able to have a small A-frame or other directional sign indicating that they are there. We're concerned about the phrase vulgar, profane messages, hate speech, or language intended to incite violence that's contained in Exhibit A and Section 6. We're concerned that this broad and subjective phrase violates the First Amendment and could lead to arbitrary enforcement, particularly in the view of the Supreme Court's decisions in Snyder versus Phelps, which is the Westboro Baptist Church decision of 2011. We see no problems with the limiting of signage at the visual triangles. In fact, this might actually help be a good solution to the concerns of many that you have an unmanageable number of signs at corners in a lot of cases. It's a really good solution for that, plus the traffic and safety and pedestrian issues. We're concerned a little bit about the size noted in the Class 1 temporary signs. This is an example of, so you can see it, of a typical A-frame type of open house that our members would use. It's designed to take an 18 by 24 sign. And in this case, the frame itself is about 28.5 by 31, slightly larger than what's allowed for in this the sign ordinance. It provides that you could either have a brokerage sign be this large sign with the brokerage name and the phone number and a sign right up here with the directional arrow. Or you could flip that and you could have something like this, open house with directional, and then the sign up here with the brokerage name and phone number as well. So it's a pretty typical type of usage for that sign. We are still concerned about residents being able to display their own welcome home, just graduated, it's a boy, it's a girl type of signage on their property. We are concerned that they will not be able to express themselves. Section 8 deals with violations and enforcement, and we have noted a person in violation may be charged with a civil or a criminal violation, and we still maintain that criminal prosecution, the potential prosecution and criminal prosecution may be a sign for a sign ordinance, may be a bit overzealous, and owners of temporary signs in violation will not receive notices is in Section 8C6, and even more concerning is Section 8E, in which the city provides that signs will be taken and discarded after 5 business days. We've noted in the past, and we still maintain that there's a due process issue with this, and we are even more convinced of this since the May 2017 decision of the Arizona Supreme Court in Horn versus Polk. So we're asking that temporary sign owners be given notice and the ability to resolve the issue and due process.
Michelle Lusky.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Councilman. I actually was not going to come up here tonight. I was here to see what was going to happen as far as the signs go. I was almost in tears, and I apologize for my expressions back there because I have been holding on by the string. You guys, my business has dropped so much. Not only my business, what I was giving to the city as far as what you guys collect in taxes from us has dropped tremendously because of the amount of business I've lost. I've lost employees because I can't pay them right now. 15 feet away from my door, really? They're not going to be able to see me because I'm right behind Goodwill. I need to be able to place these right off of Grand so that they can see where I'm at when they turn in. I've got 2 tickets since the last time because I was told if I was you, I would just put them out. If I was you, I would just put them out. I'm not going to say anything, but again, now I'm going to pay 2 more tickets that I can't afford at this time. I was almost in tears back here, so excuse my expressions. I'm in tears right now because I've fought all my life to be a business owner, and I finally made it. And I thought, okay, I can open this 3rd expansion to be able to continue and grow bigger and get more employees and things to that effect. And then this came up and it just killed my business. And I can show, I mean, I have proof of the amount of money I was making last year at this time to the amount of money that I made this year. And I'm almost in tears now because of what's going on. So 15 feet, can we talk about that? I mean, I was really here to see if I can go back tomorrow and say, hey, I get to put out the signs. My, employees were like, Michelle, let us know if we can come back to work. Let us know if we can, what's going on. Because I refused to let my business die because of what the city is doing as far as the signs go. I'm doing everything in my power. I mean, everything. I have, like I said, I'm out there on the mainframe out there. If you guys have passed by, you'll see Design with Sense. But those A-frames really help. The tickets that I've gotten the last 2 times, because I haven't put them out daily, but I've tried just to see the amount of people. And I'm telling you, those people I ask on a daily basis, how did you find me? Oh, I seen your frame. I seen your A-frame out there. Oh, I seen your sign. And out of those 15 people that walk in because they seen that sign, half of those people purchase something from my business because of the type of business that I have. So I'm pleading with you guys tonight to say, please allow us to put it out there so that everybody on the main streets can see the small businesses that are in back of the big buildings in front of us. I would love to hear that we're going to be able to do this, not 30 days from now, maybe in the next week. I mean, I can hold on for another week or 2, but I can't hold on any longer than that. So thank you for listening to us. And
thank you. Is that the last?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Eric? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, this is such a sticky wicket. But here's the thing, Eric. I know where the Imagine Spa is. And do you know where it is? Have you ever seen it? Okay, Hurricane Grill's out in front, Chinese restaurant Anna's out in front here. There's a breezeway that goes through. She's back in the breezeway, located that. Her actual business faces east. Okay, so Bell's running east and west, right? You can't see her. You can't see her unless if you walk that close to that table, you wouldn't be able to see her. And I think there are some exceptions that we got to figure out how to help these people. Okay, and I don't know how we do it. I mean, maybe some of the other council people got better ideas, but I think we need to take a look at some of these businesses that are totally blind as far as the retail consumer being able to see them. I mean, now we know that in the Kohl's Center, there's businesses that are off Bell, but you can see them. You pull into Kohl's parking lot. That's why they have anchors. That's what an anchor's for. It brings in business. So you go to Kohl's, you can see the nail shop and you can see the Sears appliance, okay? But businesses like Michelle's behind Goodwill, there is not a chance in heck that you're ever going to be able to see that business. Now I know we got the sign out on Bell. You know, she's got a sign out there, Design with Sense. But it's almost ineffective because there's like a stack of like 6 businesses there. And when you're driving 45 miles an hour, it's hard to read that in your windshield. Okay. So I'm just thinking businesses like that and like Imagine Spa, those are 2 great examples of businesses that are totally hidden. If there's some way we can make an exception, look at them and say, you know what, there's no chance that a consumer is going to be able to see you. You're either behind a building or you're in a breezeway way off, and say, okay, let's make an exception for that kind of business. I'm just saying, I really hear these ladies, and we got other businesses like that in Surprise that are tucked way away. Okay, but let's take the Red Line Grill for example. Okay, Red Line Grill. Okay, it's off Bell. There's no question, and the business actually faces away from Bell and the other little street there, but he's got signage on Bell. Big sign, Red Line Grill, big letters like this. These guys don't have that. They don't have the opportunity to have that. They have to rely on their landlord, and the landlord negotiated the sign with the city, et cetera. So and I don't know, maybe we could make a list, maybe we could go look at the businesses, and I'd be willing to go with you, Eric, or with somebody and drive and say, okay, this business, totally gone. Okay, the taco place that just opened, Pup Taco, they got signage out on Bell now. The landlord gave them signage, Pup Taco. Okay, and they were, but so their business is really starting to move, but they need that visibility out there on high traffic. And so I don't know what we do if we have them have a certain kind of A-frame that's very nice looking, but it does the job. Hey, my business is here. You got to go back here. Or my business is here. You got to go in here. I don't know that it looks nice, so it's not junky. I don't know. I just want us to think about it as an exception. I just think we've got to with some of these businesses. I think there is a difference between the businesses at Sprouts, the businesses at Target. Those are anchor stores. They bring in traffic. So when you're parking at Target, you go, oh gosh, there's that nail shop. Or, oh, there's that. I forgot all about that. But places like Michelle's business, Design with Sense, you have no reason to go back there. What are you going to go back there for? You know what I'm saying?
Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Anyway.
Imagine that, but I'm going to disagree with you that there's no reason to go back to that center where Design with Sense is. I'm a customer of Design with Sense. Michelle, I know you recognize me. So I'm a customer. And where I first found Michelle was because I frequent all those businesses back there. The dry cleaner, which was right next door to Michelle when she first opened, had been my long-term dry cleaner.
Right,
Okay,
right.
I go to Goodwill. I go to the pool store. There are a number of small businesses back there. There's the bar and grill whose name I now am forgetting because I haven't been to that one lately.
Oh, Boots and Bourbon?
Boots and Bourbon, thank you. There are a number of things that create a certain amount of foot traffic in these smaller, sort of their own little ecosystem right there in these little malls, where people are getting out of their cars and they're going to a number of the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so how I found Michelle's business was going to the dry cleaner. And so in a sense, a number of those stores become like anchors to create foot traffic for others. What a concern I have is if we start making exceptions when there are small businesses who pay a premium for road frontage, Grand Avenue, Bell Road, Reams, whatever, they pay a premium. And because they're going to get visibility, chances they're also going to get some sort of compensation through signage on the main, some sort of a main sign for that locale. Now, you said that the new taco place has now got signage on the main sign on Bell, and that's great. But Michelle says that doesn't work. She's got signage on the main, what am I thinking?
Monument sign.
Thank you. The main monument sign, she's got signage on that. So again, I think every situation is a little bit different, but if we start making exceptions, if we start walking down that slippery slope, we're going to be walking down the same slippery slope that we did when we tried to make exceptions to the rule that ultimately was challenged by the court, saying you got to treat everybody the same. You got to have a rule. You got to have a rule that makes some sense and that does not limit speech. The private property issue is one that I think we need to take into consideration. And I know that if there's anybody that takes private property into consideration, it's our good friend, Eric Fitzer. He has shown a tremendous amount of respect for private property rights as the director of our planning department. So, Eric and I spent a couple hours with our good friends at Weimar this morning, and I really appreciated the feedback that we got from Weimar and having that conversation. And I know that we all have an understanding that the nature of the real estate business is a little bit different than, and we've talked about that 3 signs is probably not enough. I just want to stand up for the work that our planning department has done in putting together this beta test ordinance. I think this beta test ordinance is the right next step. It's not perfect. We know that, but it helps us start to sort out where some of the issues are that still need work. And so I don't want to get into a situation where every small business that chooses to locate off the main drag is now entitled to a sign on the main drag. That it will be back where we started. So there has to be a solution that actually helps do some guidance in creating foot traffic. Maybe it's long term. It's probably got a lot to do with how we design these little centers. Long term, that really is the big issue. How do we design these little centers to make certain that we're collecting people off and they become destination centers where people are spending time and they're looking at how all of these little shops work together? That's a long-term solution. Short-term, classic strip malls. These are classic strip malls. And there are a lot of them in the city of Surprise that I think were poorly designed. But again, they didn't maximize the frontage on Bell Road, for example. They didn't maximize the frontage on Grand. So I think we've got the talent in place now that can help us get there as we grow as a city. So I don't want to open up Pandora's box tonight. I want to get this beta test in the ground. We as a council agreed to do that at the last council meeting before we lost our colleague, Councilmember Williams. We all agreed that the beta test was a good idea. We all understood it then. We heard from the community some of the concerns that they had. And I think we need to continue to work with them to try to help find a solution. But I hate to try to rewrite a beta test policy on the fly. I think it would be a huge mistake, and it would not serve the community well. So I appreciate the passion for listening to all these folks, because we are listening, and Weimar was grateful for us to go out to them on the I don't know how many times we've been out there, or you've been in to see us. We have been listening, and we will continue to listen as a community. I think we've done a lot, but there's going to be some that are not going to be happy with the ultimate
I know,
concern.
through the chair, I'm just really surprised that our Chamber of Commerce is not here tonight advocating for businesses. That really concerns me. They've known that this is going to be on the agenda for a long time. Where's the Chamber of Commerce? And I know they took surveys at the breakfast meeting of all their business owners. And there were some business owners that were very vocal at that breakfast about signage. And I know we can't go back and redesign. So I mean, Mayor, I don't want to argue with you, because you have a point of view, I've got a point of view.
Right.
I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater or anything. I'm just advocating that I would like us in the future to look at how we can that we're not talking about a whole bunch of businesses. I'll bet we're talking less than 10, if you really want to know. Okay? Because nobody else at that center where Hurricane Grill and the Chinese restaurant have got a visibility problem. And there's 15 other businesses there. Okay? So I'm not talking about the whole center. I'm just talking about that imagined spot, because they are unique. They're tucked way back in the breezeway. I'm just saying, if we could look at some of those businesses and say, is there any way that we can help them? Is there any way that we can do it without going down a slippery slope, as you say, because I don't want to go down that either.
I know you don't.
Okay,
and I agree with you, Councilmember Hall, that that we should continue. That's my point. We should continue to work with these folks and working with the landlords to try to figure out how we can make things more visible, working in concert with them in the future, and also retrofitting any kind of signage opportunities in our master sign plan, in a comprehensive sign plan. That's certainly my hope, is that we're going to be able to accomplish that. So this is a temporary test to try to. This beta test was something that we all agreed to, and I want to stand in support of our staff, because I think they've put a lot of effort into this, and they're not immune to the special needs of, as you say, maybe 10 business. They're not immune to the special issues that are there. So that's my goal, is that we continue to work with them. And ma'am, I'm sorry, we're beyond the public input part here. We're now trying to figure out how we move forward. So we don't. It's the process, and I appreciate your participation. Councilmember Winters.
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, is there any kind of an appeal process with this thing? I mean, it's just cut and dry, nothing more than 15 feet closer to their business.
Mayor, Councilmember Winters, as designed right now, that this would be the policy you put in place. It's not to say as we go through this process while we're looking at this that we don't address this in the finalized code. Is one of the things that we looked at specifically on staff on the staff side was here's kind of what we had in language. Here's what we've heard. Here's where we feel we can be a little bit more lenient in pieces. Here's where areas where if the council and the commission later on wants to be more lenient, then they have that ability to do so through the permanent code. But this was really to kind of get a testing of kind of what's out there in draft form, barring some minor changes that were kind of made within this policy based on the previous draft of the code.
I just feel we should have a little more empathy for these businesses. They're trying to make a living. You know, there's a little shop by the cobblestone car wash that's stuck way back there. And when I talked to him, I said, why don't you put a sign, your sign on the monument side up front? He says, well, his landlord wants $300 more a month to do that. And he says the only thing he had was that the A-frame, and of course, the city took that away. So I, you know, you're the expert on that. You probably know a lot better than I do what to do about it. I know we don't want these A-frames out there cluttering the city up, but we got to reach some kind of a compromise to help these businesses. Thank you.
Councilmember Ramley.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I sympathize with the business folks that have come forward, and I totally agree with where my colleague Hall was coming from. I don't want to go down the slippery slope either, but we're going to need to work out something for some of these businesses. We just are. But having said that, it's critical that we get this beta test on board now, because this is impacting a lot of folks. This is not going to fix all of our problems, but it's going to make things a whole lot better. So that's all I got to say about it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor Tandy.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's important we continue listening to, and I think it's urgent that we listen. I'd love to hear the 10 businesses, what their issues are through this process. It's a beta process to listen. It's going to solve a lot of people's problems, though, and those that it doesn't solve, I encourage them to come forward. But kind of like one of the people speaking earlier was, I didn't come up with enough solutions. Well, I'd like to see their ideas too, but solutions in a way that it doesn't create an exception, but creates a rule that can be applied everywhere. And I don't know what the answer is. I'll just throw out a couple, maybe a center directory or something like that working with a landlord, put it right in the breezeway that catches people going to Ann's Asian Bistro, a great Chinese restaurant, or the Hurricane Grill. Maybe that just little extra traffic sometimes in a business is just enough of an extra margin to make a business viable. So yeah, I definitely want to listen to ideas, and because of the urgency on some of this, if we find a workable idea, if we can accelerate that coming back through council, I'm okay with that as well. But I think for solving as many people's issues from what we've heard so far, we got to get going and then keep on listening for the rest.
Councilmember Hayden.
Yeah, I really think it's our responsibility to promote small business and do whatever we can to make sure that works. And I've been to the planning and zoning meetings and listened to you people, and really some horror stories out there, and really interested in doing what we need to do to make it work for you guys. So
thank you. So I think we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. We've had a very robust discussion, and I think it's pretty clear that we're not done. We're a long way from it, but we've been at it for a doggone long time. And one thing that Eric and I were talking about with Weimar today is, again, legal cases that constantly are dealing with, we're having to deal with. We're trying to respond to it. I told Weimar today, I used to be in the sign business, and if I knew that a church directional sign in Gilbert, Arizona was going to impact my sign business, I would have gotten out of it a lot earlier than I did. But again, it's impacting, these legal cases are impacting not just Surprise, Arizona or Gilbert or even Arizona. They are impacting everybody. And they're constantly test cases that are coming up. So I think it's really important that we get it right so that we're not making exceptions. We're actually getting it right, getting the policy right, and this beta test will help us get the policy right. And we are going to continue to listen to these, as you say, handful of businesses that that you think might need some additional assistance. And I'm sure that we can work with the landowners to try to find a solution. I'm confident. So with that. If we are, I see no further discussion. So get ready for the clerk to take the roll.
Councilmember Hayden.
Hayden, is your button flashing?
Sorry.
Did you get him?
No.
Push down and push down hard.
There we go. Thank you.
There you go.
So we have 5 yes vote, 1 no vote, Winters.
Okay, thank you. All right. That concludes the regular agenda for this evening's meeting. So does any council member have any future agenda items they'd like to place on the future item?
Yes, Mayor, I do.
Councilmember Winters?
I'd like to get 2 items on our next workshop. If I may, I'd like to have an update and discussion about the Ride Choice Program and the Paratransit Transportation Program delivered by TransDev.
Second.
Councilmember Winters, I think there's something already scheduled. So that's great. And I think, but
Right.
I think it's already scheduled. Is that not
Is
correct?
it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. So
Okay, fine.
that's great. We're on the same plane. Okay.
One other item on the workshop, if I can. It's a discussion about the renaming of Bullard Avenue between Greenway and Bell Road to Mike Coronado Avenue. Those are the issues I'd like to talk about. Thank you.
Do I have a second? A second for that?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Hayden?
Yeah, I would like to discuss that pool fence ordinance to consider some type of waiver. Certainly not exceeding any state specifications, and like to see if we can work out a solution to that problem.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I think we also have some meetings set up to just kind of walk through that internally before we move on to a council consideration. So let's get through that, and then we'll see where we come out. Okay.
Do we need a second on that one?
Second.
All right. All right. So the next we'll go on to council reports. So Councilmember Winters, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Mainly want to talk about our university in Surprise. Who would ever thunk it that Surprise is now a university city? That's pretty fantastic. I was at the convocation for the income students at the church, Christ Church of the Valley, last Wednesday. And I'm just telling you that the cream of the crop young people there, very polite, yes, sir, no, sir. And they had 450 students starting their first ever semester at Auto University. They really got the cream of the crop, and the university hasn't had a chance to build their character yet. And they already are really a bunch of great young people. It was a very inspirational ceremony. Had some very good speakers there, very good speeches. Our mayor was one. The president of the school was another one. And of course, the other, Dr. Tynes. So it was very great inspirational experience for me. And then Thursday, we had the groundbreaking of the new football field that they're doing over there. So it's pretty great that we have going to have a football field in the city of Surprise. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayden? Pass. Okay. Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I took a tour of West Mech, which is the trade school or vocational school or whatever names it has. It has different names what part of the country you're from. But anyway, they teach trades. And it's open. Greg Donovan and I went through it. They got 5 disciplines they're teaching right now: cosmetology, IT security, public safety, medical assistant, and dental assistant. And all the classes are pretty full. I mean, they're really doing great. Eventually, this is just phase 1. Eventually, they're going to be teaching 22 programs at that campus, which is just going to be super in terms of our workforce development edge about building economic development. Workforce development is a very important piece of that. So thank you, West Mech. I also took a tour of the new West Valley Veterans Resource Center with Vice Mayor Tandy was there. And were you there? No, you weren't there. Okay, anyway, it's a resource center. We as a city of Surprise kind of led the pack. They came to us first, Real Salado College, and asked for our help in supporting them. So Surprise stepped up, and now every city in the West Valley has stepped up. Glendale was the last one to do it. And this resource center is on the Luke Air Force Base. It's at Lightning Road on the east side of Litchfield. And it used to be a visitor center. And now it's totally done. And the thing is that Steve Yamamori from the Maricopa County Colleges was really the driving force behind this. And he put together the advisory board, which the mayor and I are on. And he got women prisoners from the women's prison down in Perryville to do all the tenant improvements. They did the drywall, they did the paint, they did electrical, all that. And then Real Salado College kicked in the equipment, so they've got all computers, they're all set up. And then Luke Air Force Base has given them the rent free. They had to go to the Department of Defense to get it approved, but they did it, and it's just fantastic. So we got a 5-year lease there, and it's going to be a resource center for all veterans in terms of homes, jobs, all kinds of things, spiritual, whatever a veteran needs. And it's a one-stop shop. So it's just exciting. Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. Councilmember Emily?
My goodness. It seems like quite a while since we've given council reports. I was just reflecting to myself the various things that I've gone to, and I got tired. So I'm not going to go over it all. Education is really big in this town. I'm just blown away by the way Ottawa has started out with their first semester with I think their goal was like 150 students, and they or 250, and they come up with 435, and going, wow, it's just absolutely amazing. I have a monthly meeting in District 4 each month on the 4th Wednesday of the month. And I'd really like to see a lot better attendance at that monthly meeting, because I'm really wanting to get some input from the folks that live in District 4. We've got a lot of stuff coming up, in District 4 that I need some input from the folks on. And so I'm having a block party on the 16th of this month in front of the Senior Center on Hollyhock Street from 4 to 6 on a Saturday. So if you want to come out and get a hamburger, hot dog, learn a little bit about the bond issue that you've heard something about, those folks will be out. Learn a little bit about some of the services that the city provides to all of its residents. And I know that our Human Vitality Department is going to be there and with all of their programs. Come on out, spend some time, meet your councilman, find out he doesn't have horns, and get involved. You know, we saw tonight 7 candidates for District 3 City Council interviewing. That was just wonderful. The involvement, folks getting involved, folks getting excited about where we're going as a city. And you know what? We need your help to get there. So thanks once again, but come on out for that block party. One other thing I want to mention, the Surprise Fiesta Grand, which is becoming quite an event, is going to be on Saturday, October the 14th. And I just got my first flyers on it, so you may see these appearing all over town. We have a great time at Fiesta Grand, I'm telling you. And I know the mayor had a ball there last year. I think the entire council was there. And looking forward to it. It's right around the corner, October 14th. So between those 2 events, we should have a good time over there by the Senior Center. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor?
Thanks. I'd like to report, and I think the entire council was there, but I'd like to report that at least I had a pretty good time at our Arizona League of Cities and Towns Conference. It's an annual conference that we're able to meet our other fellow mayors and city council members and go to a lot of different programs and learn about the cutting edge things going on throughout the state and throughout the world. So I think that's a big help. I'm also looking forward to this weekend. Councilmember Hayden and I and our wives are going to be attending the Luke Air Force Ball. So we get to dress up in our tuxedos and represent the city of Surprise. And I've been there before, and that's a great thing. It's down at the Wigwam. Couple other things I came across, information. There was a newspaper article that reported safest cities in Arizona, and they didn't really call out Surprise, but they had Surprise's ranking there. And one thing that I'd like to point out is, based on the statistics, crime rates per capita, the city of Surprise is the 2nd safest large city in Arizona of cities over 100,000, Gilbert being number 1. So I think we're doing pretty good there. And then also Wallet Hub likes to put out a lot of different surveys. And even though I think most of us have been experiencing nice appreciation in our home values, finally the last few years, they actually said City of Surprise is the 7th most affordable city in the entire United States. So we're still doing something good, and we're attracting people here. So lots of great news. I also attended the events for Ottawa University, and it's really exciting to see everything going on. And it's nice to see a whole group of new people working to make things better here in Surprise. Not only did they have, because it's first year, record-breaking enrollment here, and quite a bit more than they were expecting. They actually had record-breaking enrollment back home in Kansas as well, and throughout their other educational systems. So Ottawa University is having a fantastic year. And one thing I've noticed, and I think other residents will probably be noticing it too, I took my mom out to dinner or out to lunch, and I was over at Macayo's, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people with Ottawa shirts came walking in. And I think we're going to be seeing that a lot more throughout the city. So I'm glad they're here, and just a lot of great things to look forward in the future.
Thank you. So I'm just going to real quick think about what a couple of years ago, sitting in the city attorney's office, looking down at that parking lot, and there was nobody in it. and looking at the communiversity, and occasionally you saw a student come in and out, and we thought, boy, it's got to get better than this. It has to be better than this. We have to find a way. And this city council took a risk. And, you know, generally speaking, as city councils, we don't like taking big risks because it's your city, it's your taxes, it's your resources. But we thought this is worth taking a risk to try to find a university partner that could activate this city center and really create an opportunity for our residents, an education opportunity that is very unusual. And after many years of working and after a lot of staff time and lots of gray hairs, we've come forward with an amazing new opportunity for the city of Surprise and the entire valley, as far as I'm concerned. And when we went to the convocation the other day, the day before, the president said to me, he said, Mayor, when you sit on that stage and you look back into the faces of those brand new students, it's going to feel very real. And I have to tell you, I almost didn't make it because sitting on that stage and looking back into the eyes of 434 students who are living the dream, and they are so happy to be here and be part of growing a top-notch city, a quality community. They're part of it. They're growing up with us, and they're so honored to be a part of it. So it was a very moving experience for those of us on the stage and those people who were sitting in the audience. That every last one of them, you could hear a pin drop. They were listening. They were engaged. They're such an important part of our community. So I want to thank our staff for all the work that they've done in bringing us Ottawa University. But I want to congratulate the City Council for sticking to their guns. Because this is a big deal. Education is a big deal in the city of Surprise. West Mick, amazing. 22 programs someday, and probably sooner than later. And so we are, we're definitely, we definitely are making our mark in the West Valley, and I, for one, am very proud, and I think all of us should be proud. So I just want to thank the council for sticking to their guns on on our education component of our strategic plan. I think it's going to yield amazing results. So thank you all, and with that, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we recess meeting.
We adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
We'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned.